Nah, for sure. Yeah, I think when you put it in that context, it made me kind of realize that somebody can still be complicit in a system which is racist and still be a good person.
Yeah,
Right. I guess those two things can go together.
yeah.
Now, whether after realizing that
I
they
think
are,
sorry, but I think the so to that point over there, I think, and I think you're right because she was saying that basically you can be. It doesn't mean you can't be a good individual, but still because you're complicit within that particular system. As some people would say that if you call me a racist, it makes me
a
it
bad
makes me a
yeah,
bad person per se. But I think Layla had made a point that it's not always a case of you being a bad person, but it's just a case of you basically, being within this particular system that privilege, like that you privileged from, but then not actually seeing what's actually going on and supporting others that do not benefit from that privilege, basically.
it's officially 25th November, 7:14. We're back again with another video. How you feel?
7:14 in the morning.
7:14 in the morning.
We tried to record yesterday, but the battery died.
Battery died.
Battery in the camera died. So and obviously,
Headache.
yeah, man. And obviously, we don't have a contingency plan, so we had to shut our shop and then re-record in the morning. So yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully we come to you the freshest of sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, man. Yeah. I'm excited to get into what we're going to talk about today. We've been reading this for the past couple of days. It's been very interesting. We've challenged, I guess, a lot of our thoughts and, feelings about things.
Yeah.
So I'm
yeah.
really excited to get into it.
It's a very emotive one, and it's one that I thought about talking about. I guess in the beginning stages, but I was a little bit cautious about it, because I guess it's one that I was sort of like, I've always wanted to shed some light on, but it just felt as though, I don't know. You just kind of felt like maybe you didn't have enough education or enough information to actually speak on this particular matter. So I was a bit reluctant to come out with my opinion. Like I knew what I thought, and they were talking about discrimination and systemic racism. Basically, that's what we're talking about today. And I just kind of like knew in my head, like, so if I was chilling with my friends, I could we could have a conversation. I'll tell them what I think in it. Do you know what I mean? But obviously, when it's going out to the masses, it's kind of like you're always thinking, oh shit, am I gonna say the right thing? That kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? And I think there's always that little bit of anxiety attached to this particular topic. Yeah. So yeah, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Same here. And I guess whenever I have that feeling, or whenever we have that feeling, I guess the best thing is to default to just being honest and just, letting letting the universe or wherever it is take it where it needs to go. So I guess that's the vow today, just to be honest and clear and transparent. And
Very soon you'll be a
whatever
monk,
happens,
man.
happens.
All these kind of stuff.
I've been bald once before, so I could do it again. Right, so I
Yeah,
guess
man.
let's get into it. So the book we're talking about today is Me and White Supremacy: How to Recognize Your Privilege and Combat Racism and Change the World by Layla Saad. Just to begin, this book is written, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but it's written for a white person who kind of wants to realize the system that they're in, recognizing, it says me and white supremacy, so recognizing the white supremacy, how to recognize this and how to combat racism in the world around them.
Yeah.
So it's based is written for the white person, kind of like a two book to kind of work through. So we're not going to be talking about it. We're going to be kind of having a discussion about how we feel about some of the points.
Yeah, made from an observer's point of view, I guess. Just yeah, what we think about the points, and how we feel about them.
Yeah.
So I guess it wasn't just basically, it wasn't just for a white person per se, but then she did mention that anybody that passes for white, or anybody that benefits from white privilege. I guess this book is for, and it's I guess just to open your eyes to see what's actually going on.
Yeah, definitely. We can go through, I guess, the highlights and then touch on them briefly, but then get into the meat of the conversation, right?
Yeah.
I think. What do you think? Should we just jump in straight with our qualms and how we feel about this, like some of the meaty points, or do you want us to kind of work our way through it?
Yeah, I mean, let's have a bit of a structure in it. Yeah, let's let's jump in with some of the meaty points in it. Let's clear the air about how we feel about this book.
Yeah.
Right. Let's talk about, because I guess when there were times when we were reading it, you had some reservations about some points.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the discussion was, but can you bring it up just so we can just hash it out, basically?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess this book, when we started reading it, it was bringing up, how people who experience white privilege or who benefit from white privilege and who pass as white are kind of complicit in a system which is made to benefit them, and by being complicit in the system and by not, I guess, speaking out about it, they are complicit to racism, and it's almost as bad as somebody who is overtly racist because they allow a system of racism to keep going and to perpetuate itself. So when I first read that, it made me feel really uncomfortable because I guess I have this baggage about what racism is, and I like to think of people who are racist as individuals who don't have a good character or people who aren't nice people. And I think naturally my worldview is I like to see people have a benevolent lens on where I like to see everyone as, kind and nice until they prove me otherwise. So to kind of reading this book kind of made me feel like white people in general are complicit to a system of racism. And that didn't make me feel nice or make me feel good because it made me think that, is everyone around me kind of, who's white and who passes as white, complicit in this system and therefore not a good person. So I guess that was the first touching point which I had with this book. And I think you explained it to me so nicely. So I'd like you to explain to me again the way you did when you kind of broke it down.
Yeah, so I think obviously it's very interesting because I think your schema of thought was being challenged at that particular point in time, which I think many people reading this book would experience. But we spoke of racism, the term racism not necessarily being always a kind of like a demonic term as such. So obviously when we always talk about someone being racist, the term is always tagged as somebody who is a far right, sort of like from a far right fascist kind of movement, who would want to, I guess, wipe out the black race, kind of thing, like a very an extreme. You look at an extreme definition for that particular person.
Like you go to the KKK straight away.
Yeah, exactly. That sort of thing. So nobody wants to be termed as that. But I guess racism in itself is purely discrimination as a result of race or someone's skin color, basically. So when we spoke of discrimination, obviously I was just making the point that essentially this was more coming from a point of people, benefiting from the privilege that the system has basically created. Because obviously, I was explaining that the system has been created by their forefathers, right? So take for example, you speak to a lot of white people. They'll tell you that my great grandfather or my grandfather has no basically calibration. Most of them back in the days they had no calibration for race. They were more sort of like concerned about preserving their own, right? And the system was basically created for them back then, for their own people.
Yeah.
So in this day and age, what you basically see is that the indigenous or the white people, let's put it that way, the white people will basically benefit from a system that's been created for them by their forefathers. So So where does that leave the ethnic minority groups? So if a system is obviously created for the white people, the ethnic minority groups would struggle to benefit from a system that was not created for them, if you know what I mean. So then I think the point that Layla Saad was basically trying to make is that if you live in a system that is basically sort of like has basically been created for you as a result of people in the past, knowingly or unknowingly, creating a system for their own people to flourish, then you are in a sense complicit in this discrimination that other people are basically suffering from. So I think the whole point or the whole premise of the book was basically to open your eyes to what was going on historically and what's affecting people of ethnic minority groups and people of color today. So that's what basically I explained to you and tried to get you to understand. I don't know if that.
No, for sure. Yeah, I think when you put it in that context, it made me kind of realize that somebody can still be complicit in a system which is racist and still be a good person.
Yeah.
Right. I guess those two things can go together.
Yeah.
Now, whether after realizing that
I
they
think,
are,
sorry, but I think so to that point over there, I think you're right because she was saying that basically you can be. It doesn't mean you can't be a good individual, but still because you're complicit within that particular system. As some people would say that if you call me a racist, it makes me
a bad
a bad person per se. But I think Layla had made a point that it's not always a case of you being a bad person, but it's just a case of you basically, being within this particular system that privilege, like that you privileged from, but then not actually seeing what's actually going on and supporting others that do not benefit from that privilege, basically.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that was the first touching point. I guess that's a nice segue to lead us into the second I guess discussion we had, which was over on the kitchen counter.
Yeah.
So moving on from that and moving on to a nice segue, I guess, into we talk about a system being created for individuals to benefit them through no fault of their own by, say, their ancestors or by their people that came before them. I guess the next thing that I had to contend with was, as a black person who comes from Africa, right, as an African living in this society, racism is something that exists, but racism is something that doesn't weigh too heavy on my shoulders, because I feel as though, Africa is a place. I come from Africa. I'm Ghanaian, and that is where, I feel at home, and I know that amongst my people, I don't get this. I don't have to think about racism or worry about it. And I know that the plan is to always go back when the time comes to it. So I guess the fight for equality in the UK is something which I feel is a transient battle I fight right now living in the UK. I think we had this discussion, right? And I want you to just touch on that and how you feel about that, and I guess we can go a bit deeper as well.
Yeah, I mean that's a bit of a contentious one, but I think yeah, it's our lived experience at the end of the day, and I think from that perspective, you're right in a sense, because I think that I guess when all avenues, or sort of like when this is all and I guess you've been brought up in this environment and you don't know anything here, and you call like this part of the world home, let's say for instance, then it is a battle that you have to fight for your offsprings and your future kids. Let's put it that way, yeah.
And like Layla Saad said, it to be a good ancestor.
Exactly.
That's why she fights this battle, right?
Exactly, but even though I guess I would let's say fight this particular battle, I don't know that I could fully sort of like put myself in the shoes of somebody who's basically, you know, all they know, like they've born and bred, all their, you know, their grandfathers and everybody's, you know, been in the system and is being, you know, has basically grown up in in this part of the world. I don't know if I can sort of like, you know, understand that struggle. But I can understand obviously from my lived experience and how, the time that I've been here. But I say this to say that it is real that for a proportion of people that, let's say, migrated or are living, you know, in the western part of the world for whatever reason, maybe it's like a transient sort of like, you know, reasons, and they're thinking of going back to their motherland. I feel as though at times the them wanting to fight for this particular struggle would not be the same as somebody, like, you know, and I think I'm making the same point. Somebody who's like, you know, being brought up here and has lived here forever. You know, this is not to say that they both don't experience racism. They both do, but I guess there's that bit of, you know, identity back home. You know, and I'm saying this to say that I'm not saying that, you know, people that have, you know, grown up here don't have an identity, but they do. But I'm just saying that when there's that bit of like, you know, thing back home, okay, you know where you're from, it's like, okay, cool. If you're gonna act up, if you're gonna do this, then bruv, I'm gonna go back to where I come from. That kind of thing, innit? Is that the right thing? Yeah. I don't think it always is. I think that, but is the reality, you know? Yeah, man.
Yeah, definitely. Right. Right, bringing it back to the book.
Yeah.
I think we've barely discussed the book, but I guess it's all part of the discussion, right?
Yeah, it's all part of it. But
yeah.
you know, so yeah.
There's something in here which I think it would be good to talk about, and that is tone policing.
Right.
So tone policing, I guess, is the attitude of asking someone to change the way they speak about an event which has affected them emotionally. So you come to me and you tell me about an emotional event that you experienced,
Yeah.
at work or whatever it is, and I try and, I guess, tell you to calm down and tell me, or I try and tell you, oh, it's not what you think, it's this or it's the other. Tone policing is something that, the way it's defined in this book, I think I've been guilty of, right? Where somebody says something and you try and find a different reason as to why that happened, or you try and tell them it's not that serious, or a term which is known as gaslighting, which is when you try and make them feel like the way they came, like they're crazy or whatever it is. Yeah. So how do you feel about tone policing and gaslighting and and that that discussion?
I think that theoretically is a very good point. Tone policing, and on paper, obviously, it makes sense not to tone police. However, I think that the implication of tone policing within our society would be an idealistic one. I say this to say that it's difficult to have a dialogue or a conversation, and someone to say, you know, whose fault is it? I mean, it's difficult to have a dialogue or a conversation with another when, let's say, for instance, let me think about how to word this. Okay, I'm gonna approach it from this angle. I think the most important thing here is to actually have a dialogue and have a conversation, right? With, or whoever the oppressor is. Yeah, because without that conversation, we can't move forward. But in order for that conversation to happen, the oppressor or whoever is experiencing that, the privilege, would need a certain level of education as to why they shouldn't tone police. Okay. And then obviously Layla Saad talks about white fragility, and that's the white fragility is the reason why people wouldn't want to engage in a certain conversation about racism. Yeah, so we're talking about tone policing. So I guess your question in terms of tone policing was, what was my thought about tone policing? You talked about you being guilty of it in the past, but I'm saying that, I think we're at a stage when we look at the Black Lives Matter protest. Yeah, that's as a result of, I guess, people sort of like tone policing, individuals for a very long time. Because like, if you're upset about something, and anytime I come to you and you're telling me, yo, bro, like, listen, just chill, man, don't talk to me like that, I'm not gonna listen to you. Eventually, if I keep suppressing my feelings, eventually it's gonna come up. It's gonna come out somehow, right? It doesn't just come out of thin air. It's just like as a result of like me, suppressing this over a long period of time.
Yeah.
So I think, yes, people should be allowed to express their feelings and their emotions about how they feel about a particular subject, without being judged as such. But here's the thing: the person on the other end of the table, or on the other side, has to be educated, or need to have a certain level of education about as to why they shouldn't tone police. And I guess the issue here is, whose responsibility is it, right? I don't think it is entirely or solely black person's responsibility. Some people say it's not at all black people's responsibility. It is the white man's responsibility to educate themselves about why I shouldn't tone police and why I should listen.
And I guess that's what this book is made for, right?
Exactly, and why I should listen. And that's why this book, basically explains why you should tone police, and what why you feel a certain way when you tone policing. But here's my thing: if the person on the other side of the table is not educated enough, then that conversation wouldn't happen, right? And I guess the key question here is that how long would we have to wait for the other person to want to educate themselves about discrimination, about systemic racism and discrimination, and listen to us regardless of how we're putting this message across? Because obviously it's an emotive. I mean, look, you can't suppress your emotions and all this kind of stuff, and express yourself.
I guess sorry to cut you off, but I guess so it comes to a point now, if this individual doesn't want to learn or doesn't want to change, I guess, or doesn't feel like changing is worth it, I guess, what's the next steps after that? Let me bring in a quote just to kind of throw some more gas on the fire, talking about gaslighting. It says, I speak out, this is Layla Saad, I speak out of direct and particular anger at an academic conference, and a white woman says, tell me how you feel, but don't say it too harshly, or I cannot hear you. But is it my manner that keeps her from hearing, or the threat of a message that her life may change?
Yeah, I mean, they're both assumptions in my opinion. I can't really, I don't know, and I guess that's why she put in that as a question. Both could be right, but I guess the thing is, this is where we're at, and that's what you saw with the Black Lives Matter protest, right? Where, like you said, it's like people want to be heard, but then they've not been heard for so long, so automatically people just take to the streets and then protest, and then let their voices be heard, right? Ideally, a dialogue or conversation would be better, but like I say, if the white woman is saying that, speaking the way that that will be beneficial to me and that will be comfortable for me, then it's one of them. Yeah. So
absolutely, and just to obviously we'll be carrying this conversation, but I think it's a good place to kind of put a cap on it.
We didn't even touch on any of the actual points.
I think the conversations were more interesting though than
I guess
points, right?
Yeah.
So one thing you really mentioned, which I really like, is about where does the responsibility lie. Now, me, I am a massive proponent for taking on responsibility as an individual.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that is where your power lies, right? We read stuff about the Stoic philosophy, we meditate, and it's all about what can you control. And I feel like that is a big conversation we can have in the next video, which is about, how, where does responsibility lie and who takes responsibility,
Sure.
right? And I think that's a good place to.
Yeah. We
What
can.
do you think?
Yeah. I think it's a tricky one. Obviously, we're going to talk about it in the next episode. But I think where does the responsibility lie is fair enough, but we shouldn't discredit the emotions that come with people feeling that it's not their sole responsibility. If you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
If you know what I mean. So I think it's one that you can touch, but you can't discredit the other fact. So yeah, it's something that we can.
You can, yes. All right. So thanks for watching. If you watched this far, why haven't you subscribed? Right?
Yeah, that's a good one, man. Just subscribe.
If you've watched this far, then hit the subscribe button. It helps us a lot. We're on the road to 50 subscribers.
Yeah.
So keep watching, subscribe, like the video, share, comment down below, keep the conversation going, because I think it's one that it's vital to I guess in the climate we're in, it's vital, and it's good to see different points of view. Anything else to add?
No, that's it.
No? Okay. Thanks for watching, and yeah. Boom.